Could there be a more interesting topic than life or death? I would like to inform you on how you can save a life through a death. A new person is added to a waiting list every 12 seconds. That leaves there being far more recipients than there are people willing to donate their organs. According to psychologist Amy Novotny, most Americans express interest in wanting to donate their organs, but opt not to simply because of misperceptions. I would like to inform you on what it means to be an organ donor, as well as the pros and cons of each type. Before we begin that, let's look briefly at what it means to be an organ donor. An organ donor is one who is willing to donate any of their organs to another individual. According to Dr. Siegel, a psychologist, one person can save up to 50 lives by donating their organs. Now there's two categories of donors. The first one is living, and the second is a deceased donor. Deceased donors can donate liver, kidney, lungs, skin, eyes, heart, and pancreas. However, if you're a living donor, you can only donate parts of those things, such as a part of your liver or one of your kidneys. So let's look first at a living donor, which is far less common than a deceased. A living donor can be anyone who meets any of the qualifications, which are usually simply that you're free from any illnesses such as cancers. So this is one with good health. They also need to be well informed and willing to donate according to Transplant Living. As with anything, it has its pros and cons, and there are risks. So let's take a look first at the pros. The pros for a living donor include simply that you're saving someone's life. However, at any point you can change your mind, so this does give you some freedom of choice and allows you to have more control over the donation and the decision. Also, your body can compensate for any of the organs that you're donating. So for example, if you give up one of your kidneys to someone, the other kidney will just have to work twice as hard to make up for the loss of that kidney, but it is possible. Another pro is the fact that your initial surgery hospital bill is covered completely. However, there are cons, so let's take a look at those. The cons for a living donor is simply the fact that it's a more risky procedure in surgery. So while the surgery is major, there are often complications that follow, and if they're in the near future, then the hospital isn't going to cover it like they do for your initial surgery. Also, there's always the risk that your organ will be rejected by the recipient. So that would put not only you at harm, but that person at a higher risk. So now let's look at the second type of organ donor, which is more common, the deceased donor. A deceased donor is also anyone who is in good health, free from any illnesses. Unlike the living, your organs are donated upon your death. Like I said, this is the majority of donors, simply because it's not risky for the individual, but it also has pros and cons. So again, let's look at the pros first. The pros for a deceased donor, according to Emory Transplant Center, are the fact that it gives that person a second chance at life. So this allows the family of the deceased donor to have a sense of goodness and peace in the midst of the tragedy of a loss of a loved one. Also, the family often has a sense that the loved one lives on. A good example that I just read about the other day is the Connor family. This is Bill Connor, the father of a 20-year-old daughter who passed away in a tragedy, but was an organ donor. Her organs were spread out to individuals randomly, but this is Jack, who actually received her heart. And so what Bill did was he tried to raise awareness of organ donation by biking to each of the recipients that her organs were donated to. And the one that he reached out to was the one that received her heart. So upon meeting him, he actually got the chance to listen to his daughter's heartbeat inside of him. And he was overwhelmed with not only emotion, but peace and comfort, knowing that there was goodness in the middle of the tragedy of the death of his daughter. So now that you know about a deceased donor pros, let's take a look at the cons. The cons for a deceased donor, also according to Emory Transplant Center, say that you don't have the choice over the recipient. So unlike being a living donor and you know someone who, maybe a family member or a friend of a friend that needs a kidney, you can donate your kidney and choose that your kidney goes to that person. But if you're a deceased donor, your kidney goes to whoever's on the list in need of a kidney, so you don't have control. And that can be a major con if supposedly someone you know is on that list, but you didn't know, you can't have any control. So if you are a deceased donor, the kidney's not probably going to go to your friend that's on the list. It's going to go whoever's at the top of the list. Another con is the fact that there is the common fear that 52% of Americans have, that if you're a deceased donor and you're in critical condition in the hospital, that the doctor will not try as hard to save your life simply because he can use your organs to go somewhere else. Now, I understand that that is a real fear, and so for some, that is simply the reason why they're not a donor. However, hopefully now you have a better understanding of what it means to be an organ donor and the types and the pros and cons of each. So, what now? What do you do with that information? All I ask is that you use the information to take into consideration possibly being a living or a deceased donor. Because as you know, a new person is added to a list every 12 seconds, and the only way to increase the chances of them living is to increase the donors. And so, while I understand that this is a personal respected decision, I just ask that you take it into consideration based upon the information that I've supplied you with. But as the old saying goes, live and let live.